Hello everyone. Today we are going to start with a new poem, A Dust of Snow, written by Robert Frost. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. Once again I shall read out the poem for you. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. This poem is written by Robert Frost, who was the most celebrated figures in American poetry, and he has written numerous poetry collections. Now, guys, we shall see the summary of the poem, The Dust of Snow. This article focuses on a short poem. As you have just seen, it is a very short poem, Dust of Snow, written by Robert Frost. It illustrates the extraordinary curative power of nature and trivial things in life. Nature cures everything, whether it is awful mood or illness. The author is experiencing one such bad day when a crow's movement near hemlock dusted snow upon him. The snow instantly makes him happier. His day gets tons better. The supremacy of nature made him realize his problems are petty. The fact that hemlock is poisonously combined with crow being the indicator of doom and fear is utilized in the poem because the carrier of happiness within the lifetime of the nature is ironical. The poet tries to spotlight that sometimes creatures linked with negative aspects of life often bring change and happiness. Being outdoors in nature, with all its unpredictability, one can benefit anyone, anywhere, and anywhere at any time. To continue with the summary, it is winter season and the poet is in a bad mood, sitting quietly under the hemlock tree, covered all over the snow. On spur of moment, a crow sitting on the branch of the tree shakes the tree, and the snow from the tree falls on the poet. The snow is cold and velvety to touch, which changes the poet's mood from bitter to elate. This fills him with a refreshing feeling. This moment was very compelling and saves his day from disappointment. The black crow usually symbolizes bad omen, an emblem of death and fear. Since the crow is not related to goodwill, it is ironic that during this poem he did an honest deed by shaking off the snow. Robert Frost did not prefer to use any other trees like oak, maple, or pine. He chose the hemlock, which is typically related to poison and toxicity. Similarly, he uses dust, which is useless to anybody, and nobody wants to be liking dust. But the poet uses it as an impulse that brings positive thoughts in mind. Anyway, the alluring snow that adorns the poisonous hemlock tree's branches is shaken off by a scary crow. We have toxic hemlock covered in pure white snow, and a person who is depressed getting to kill himself and walking under the tree. The black crow throws the snow on the poet. The fields of pure cold snow alter his mind about sacrificing his life. On the contrary, he decides to forget the regrets of his life and sorrow to follow the path of healing of the inner soul. This poem conveys the message that nothing in life is small. Even trivial things can bring positive changes in our life. In addition to this, it also shows that if we take things positively in life, situations do change for better. Even the small help or good gestures we do for others make large differences. Just believe those random acts of kindness we do and the way they brighten a person's day and sometimes change their future. Noticing and appreciating all the tiny things in life will make our life happier. Now, here is the conclusion the, of the poem The Dust of Snow. The poem teaches us a lesson that every small act in life can illuminate our soul and motivate us to do better. I shall repeat the conclusion of Dust of Snow. The poem teaches us a lesson that every small act in life can illuminate our soul and motivate us to do better.
Hello and welcome everyone. Don't you think poems like these grow on you with time?
Robert Frost does that with his poems, with almost all of them. He could be talking about the traffic or the weather and still manage to hide 100 metaphors and 100 miracles of meanings.
Oh yes, that's why we have so many of his poems in our curriculum. Big ideas don't need big words. And that's why, as an exception, today we are going to start by talking a little about the poet himself. Robert Lee Frost, March 26, 1874 to January 29, 1963, was an American poet who was virtually unknown for the first 40 years of his life. He exploded on the scene after returning from England at the beginning of World War I. His work frequently employed settings from rural life in New England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. One of the most popular and critically respected American poets of the 20th century, Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime, receiving 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry and admiration of the American President John F. Kennedy. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution, and the unofficial poet laureate of the United States. Rural life is a consistent theme in Robert's poetry, as is simplistic language that is pleasing to the ear. He felt strongly that poetry was best appreciated when read aloud. Dust of Snow was published in the 1923 poetry collection New Hampshire, which won a Pulitzer Prize. It was one of the shortest poems in the collection and has one single sentence. The poem was originally titled Favor in 1920, later renamed as Snow Dust in 1921, and finally Dust of Snow in 1923. It was set to music by Elliott Carter in one of his most famous musical compositions.
Thank you. Let me take up the explanation now. The title informs us that it's the middle of the winter season. Winters are long and hard in northern countries and often associated with gloom. The speaker is standing beneath a hemlock tree. The poisonous hemlock is actually a herb, not a proper tree. The tree hemlock is a common, non-poisonous coniferous tree shown here. As often happens with Robert Frost's poems, people arrive at some really awkward and incorrect conclusions. In this poem's case, it is often assumed that the speaker in the poem went to the hemlock tree to commit suicide. But that is very much incorrect. So it was just a random tree in the speaker's way and he happened to stop under it for a moment. The way a crow. A crow is common, unattractive and black. Its choice as an agent of change is surprising. But here it is. The crow shook down on me. The crow, of course, didn't shake it down with intentions to help anyone. It was just going about its usual ways. It's not how or why it happened, but what it led to. The dust of snow. There are thick layers of snow on the tree, and the crow's landing unsettles it, and some particles fall down on the speaker. hemlock tree. As already explained, the hemlock tree is not poisonous, but it may be a symbol of something perceived as dangerous, even if wrongly. Has given my heart a change of mood. The way it happens reaches straight to the speaker's heart. He was lost deep in thoughts, probably some worry or regret, and paralyzed by his own thoughts. Then suddenly, the fresh, cold touch of snow on his head, his face, his neck, and maybe his palms suddenly wakes him up to the present moment. The white, serene surroundings full of nature's beauty and majesty. And it gives him the change he desperately needed. All he needed was a little break from his mental paralysis. And he gets that, thanks to this random act of unintended kindness by a crow. And saved some part. Not all of it. So this was not a life-changing miracle, but still a very much needed break. A welcome relief that gave him just enough strength to save some part of a day I had rued. He was just having a bad day, nothing uncommon. A bad day doesn't mean a bad life. So we have to be careful to not blow things out of proportion. If it was his whole life he had rued, then the falling dust of snow wouldn't have been able to bring him out. He would have dismissed it instantly. It was only because he kept the rowing in limits that he could benefit from the little incident. It doesn't take something or someone beautiful to do something beautiful. It doesn't need helpful intentions to do something helpful. The little things in life all around us are their own miracles and their own Myers. It's all a matter of perception, awareness and readiness within us. Do not get stuck in a single hope or memory. Accept the dynamic nature of life and keep moving on.
Thank you. Let me take up the analysis now. Let's discuss the characters first. The narrator. He had a bad day, but he is not a pessimist. He is in a gloomy mood, but capable of being brought out of it with some help. He is momentarily paralyzed by his thoughts while standing under the tree, trying to make sense of things. But the touch of snow suddenly brings him back to life, and in that little instant, he finds reason and courage enough to let go and move on. He decides to save whatever is left of the day that had already been wasted by negativity. He has rare inner strength and sense of awareness that saves him from getting sucked in the pit of pessimism. He is a fighter at ease with life's changeability. The crow. The common ugly crow gives the narrator a much-needed break from his own disturbing thoughts and saves his day. The narrator rules the day, but thanks to the crow only partially, not completely. The crow is kind of an unlikely angel, and a reminder that hope and salvation are not offices of beauty. Anything and anyone can bring you that, if you let them. The hemlock tree. The hemlock tree stands for the misunderstood, ignored support sources of our everyday life. The very name hemlock brings to our mind death and end. That's the common opinion, the tradition, in reality a prejudice. Nothing by itself is good or evil. It's how much you allow it that defines its possibilities. The narrator allowed a scavenger bird, the crow, and a poison synonym, the hemlock, to give him a wonderful, refreshing experience, and that is as much to the credit of the narrator as to the nature and its forces. Now let's discuss the major themes and lessons. Nature. The amazing power of nature to rejuvenate us is beautifully brought forth in the poem. Life itself can often be such a distraction from truly living that we forget to enjoy our limited time in the world. In the middle of our artificial anxieties and obligations, forces of nature make us pause and ponder and help us in getting our priorities right. So remember to appreciate the little joys of life. Anomalies. The examples of a crow and hemlock tree doing something nice for a human being remind us that the world and our lives are full of anomalies, things which defy their repetitions. Not everything beautiful will be worthy of admiration. Conversely, not everything unattractive will be worthless. So, don't go by appearances and reputations. Dynamism. The narrator's ability to be positively influenced by dust of snow reminds us of the importance of embracing life as it comes our way. Do not dwell on past, neither rely too much on the future. To be in full control of life, we need to be fully aware of it in each and every moment. So, instead of fearing it, welcome change and keep moving on, taking the ups and downs in a stride.
So we have seen this poem Dust of Snow consists of two stanzas. Each of these stanzas is made up of 4 lines. This entire poem consists of 8 lines in total. Stanza 1. The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. In this poem, the poet is talking about a winter's day when all the treetops were covered with snowflakes. The poet was walking under one such snow covered tree. This was a hemlock tree. The hemlock tree is usually associated with poison and toxicity as a poison named hemlock is also made. Thus, this tree cannot be associated with anything positive. However, a crow came and sat down on this tree suddenly, and because of this sudden motion, the mass of snowflakes from the tree top fell down on the poet like rain. The snowflakes were so light and small that the poet thought they looked like white, immaculate dust particles. If indeed dust particles could ever be white, this shower of snowflakes from the hemlock tree is evidently the subject matter of this poem, since it touched the poet in some way. Now we move on to second stanza. The last 4 lines of the poem are: has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I rued. Now, in the second stanza, the poet explains exactly in what way the shower of snowflakes had an effect on him. He says that it changed his mood. Earlier, he had been in a despairing mood. He was in despairing mood, but the shower of the snowflakes falling on him all of a sudden gladdened his heart. In addition to this, there was another effect that the shower of snowflakes had on the poet. He says that the particular day was one that he had not been looking forward to, and in fact, it was not going too well either. He had decided in his mind that that particular day would go to waste. However, the shower of dust, like snow on his shoulder, changed his mind. It made him feel that the day had not been a complete waste. At least some part of that day had been pleasant, since it had given him a new experience that he could treasure, as well as the material for another one of his wonderful poetic compositions. We see the quick revision notes now before we end up. The poet was sitting under a hemlock tree and he was upset as his day did not go too well. Suddenly, a crow sitting on a tree shakes the tree and the fine particles of snow from the tree falls on the poet. The soft and cold touch of snow changes the poet's mood from sad to happy. He starts feeling soothed and refreshed. In this way, a simple moment proves to be very significant and saves rest of the day of the poet from being wasted and held in regret. The poem describes a very simple happening in very simple words. It tells us that sometimes even a small incident may prove to be a larger significance. The poet is upset in the beginning of the poem, but a small incident of falling of snow changes his mood totally. In the end of the poet feels relaxed and thankful to the nature for saving his day from being wasted. So we have seen that The Dust of Snow is a beautiful short poem which was written by Robert Frost. This poem tells that even a simple moment has a large significance. The poet has mentioned crow and hemlock tree in this poem. The crow signifies his depressive and sorrowful mood, and the hemlock tree is a poisonous tree. Both these signify that the poet was not in a good mood, so he describes the dark, depressive, and bitter side of nature to present his similar mood. The poet says that once he was in a sad, depressive mood and was sitting under a hemlock tree. A crow sitting on the same tree shook off the dust of snow, that is, the small particles of snow that remain on the surface after the snowfall on the poet. This simple action changed the poet's mood. He realized that he had just wasted a part of his day repenting and being lost in sorrow. But the change in his mood made him realize that he should utilize the rest of the day in some useful activity. His sorrow was washed away by the light shower of snow dust. His spirit was revived and he got ready to utilize the rest of his day. So, this was all about The Dust of Snow, which was the first poem from First Flight, which is our textbook in English. So, this end up with today's lecture. Thank you, dear students. Take care of yourself. Stay at home. Stay safe. Stay healthy. God bless you all.